Don't look at me, Daniel. The woman brushing past him kept her face turned toward the departure board, but her voice cut straight through 5 years of grief. If you want your daughter alive, keep walking. Daniel's knees almost gave out right there between platform 6 and a crying toddler with a red balloon. Because he knew that voice. Not the sound of it, the ache of it. The exact way it landed on his name, soft at first, then trembling at the end, like she was afraid his name could break in her mouth. Elena. 5 years ago, he buried her. If stories like this get under your skin and stay there, subscribe, like the video, and tell me where you're watching from before we go on. Because this one doesn't let go, and I promise the end will hit harder than you expect. Daniel kept walking. He didn't breathe, didn't blink, didn't trust his own bones. The station was loud, shoes scraping, announcements echoing, brakes screaming on steel. But suddenly all of it felt far away, like he was underwater, and the only real thing in the world was the woman 2 steps ahead of him in a gray coat. She never looked back. "Blue hat by the newspaper stand," she said. "Don't stare. He's watching you." Daniel swallowed. "Who are you?" Her hand brushed his, ice cold. She slipped something into his palm, a brass key. Then she whispered, "You were never supposed to see me again." He turned anyway, just for a second. She had the same dark hair, shorter now, the same scar near her left eyebrow from when they were 22 and she ran into a kitchen cabinet laughing too hard. The same mouth he had kissed in hospital parking lots and rainy grocery lines, and one stupid elevator that stopped between floors on their honeymoon. And then she saw him looking. For the first time, Elena's face cracked. Not with joy, with terror. "Daniel, no!" A man shoved between them, cursing into his phone. A train wailed into the station. People surged forward. And Elena was gone. Daniel stood frozen in the middle of the crowd like a man hit by lightning, but still somehow standing. The brass key dug into his hand so hard it hurt. Good. Pain meant he wasn't losing his mind. Maybe. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Lucy. He answered too fast. "You okay?" A pause. His daughter sounded annoyed, not frightened. "That's a weird way to say hello." Daniel closed his eyes. He could hear teenagers laughing behind her, the hiss of a bus stopping. Where are you?" "At Maya's. I told you this morning." Right. She had. He had nodded without listening, running late for his shift. "You need anything?" she asked. And there was that thin wall between them again, the one that had been there for years. Polite, careful, nothing like family should sound. "No," he said. "Just get home before dark." "Dad, I'm 17. "I know." Another pause, then softer. "You sound shaky." Daniel looked at the key. Across the station, the man in the blue hat was gone. "I'm fine." He hung up and instantly hated himself for it. 5 years, and he still did this. Felt too much, said too little, and let the silence do all the damage. He stared at the brass key again. Taped to it was a tiny folded note. "Locker 214, West Hall. Come alone." No name, no explanation, no room left to breathe. He should have gone to the police. He should have called his brother. He should have thrown the key away and gone home and pretended grief had just learned a new trick. Instead, he walked. West Hall was older than the main station, all peeling paint and dim yellow lights. The kind of place that smelled like dust, wet coats, and old departures. Locker 214 was tucked behind a broken vending machine. His hand shook so hard it took him 3 tries to get the key in. The lock popped. Inside was a black duffel bag and a phone so old it had buttons. Daniel pulled out the phone first. One new voicemail. His thumb hovered, then pressed. Static, breathing, and Elena. If you're hearing this, it means I failed to stay hidden. Daniel gripped the shelf so hard his nails bent backward. Her voice on a machine, like the dead calling collect. I don't have much time. Listen to me carefully. Don't tell Caleb. Don't tell anyone Caleb can reach. He lied about the fire. He lied about the body. And if he finds out you've seen me, he'll go to Lucy first. Daniel's face drained of color. Caleb. His younger brother. Detective Caleb Mercer. The one who stood beside him at the funeral. The one who helped him identify Elena's bracelet in an evidence bag because Daniel's hands had been shaking too badly to unzip it. The one who held Lucy when she screamed at the cemetery. The one who spent 5 years telling Daniel to stop digging, stop asking, stop bleeding his life into a grave that had already closed. The message continued. There's a drive hidden in the house. He never found it. They'll come for Lucy when they realize that. Go to the old chapel on Wren Street at 7. If you still believe I loved you, come alone. The voicemail ended. Daniel just stood there. Then, from the duffel bag, an envelope slipped and hit the floor. On the front, in Elena's handwriting, were 3 words he had dreamed about for 5 straight years. I didn't leave. His legs finally gave out. He slid down against the lockers and sat on the filthy station floor with that envelope shaking in his hands, while strangers passed and didn't notice that a man's whole reality had just split open beside a broken vending machine. He remembered the funeral like a fever dream. Closed casket, white roses Elena hated. Rain so hard it turned the cemetery paths into mud. Lucy, 12 years old, standing in black shoes that pinched her heels, asking him in a voice so small it barely existed. If they never saw Mom's face, how do they know it's really her? He had no answer then. Maybe that was the first lie. Maybe the first lie was before that. The night Elena died, they had fought. Not about infidelity, not about some dramatic secret. About bills, about her coming home late, about Daniel feeling her drifting and being too proud and too scared to say, "Please, just tell me what's wrong." She had stood in the kitchen with tears in her eyes and said, "If something happens to me, promise me you'll take Lucy and run." And he had laughed. Laughed. Not because it was funny, because he thought she was exhausted and being dramatic, and he was too angry to hear the fear beneath her words. The next morning, her car was found near the river after a warehouse fire tore through the docks. The police said the blaze burned too hot for proper identification, but they found her bracelet, her ring, a partial dental match. Enough to bury, enough to end a woman, enough to ruin a family. Daniel got up so fast he nearly blacked out. Wren Street Chapel was 40 minutes away, and before he went anywhere near it, he had to make sure Lucy was safe. He called her 3 times. No answer. By the 4th call, his pulse was in his throat. He texted, "Call me now." Nothing. He called Maya's mother. Lucy had left 20 minutes ago. He called Lucy again. Straight to voicemail. Now he was running, out of the station, into traffic, into memory, into the ugly possibility that Elena had come back for one reason only, that their daughter was already in danger. By the time he got home, the front door was unlocked. Daniel stopped cold. He never left it unlocked. The house was too quiet. "Lucy?" No answer. He moved through the kitchen, the living room, the hall. Her backpack was on the sofa. Her shoes were by the stairs. Her phone was on the counter. And beside it, a note in Caleb's clean block handwriting. "Took Lucy somewhere safe. Don't panic. Call me." Daniel's vision blurred red. He dialed immediately. Caleb answered on the second ring. "Hey, I was just about to call." "Where is she?" A beat of silence. Then the calm cop voice, the practiced one. "I got a tip there might be a threat connected to Elena's old case." Daniel's body turned to ice. "You knew." "What?" "You knew she was alive." Long silence this time. Not confusion. Calculation. "Daniel," Caleb said carefully. "Where are you?" That was answer enough. Daniel hung up. His brother called back twice. Daniel ignored it, grabbed his keys, and drove to Wren Street with both hands clamped so tight on the wheel he thought his wrists might snap. The chapel had been abandoned for years. Broken stained glass, vines strangling the stone. One crooked door hanging half open, like the place had been trying to die for a long time and no one had let it. Inside, candlelight flickered near the old altar. And Elena stepped out of the shadows. For one terrible second, neither of them moved. She looked thinner, older, not by years, but by damage. Her face was sharper, her eyes darker, like sleep had been rationed out to her 1 hour at a time. But it was her. Every impossible inch of her. Daniel crossed the room in 3 steps, then stopped. Not because he didn't want to touch her, because he did. Because 5 years of grief collided with 5 years of rage in his chest and turned his body to stone. Elena's lips trembled. "I'm sorry." He laughed once. It sounded broken. "Sorry?" Tears filled her eyes instantly. "I know what that sounds like." "You let me bury you." "I know." Lucy cried herself sick for a year. Elena flinched like he'd hit her. Good, he thought, and instantly hated himself for that, too. "She still sleeps with your sweater in her closet," he said. "You want to know what else, Elena? She stopped celebrating her birthday, because the last one you were alive for was 2 days before you died, and she decided birthdays were cursed." Elena covered her mouth and turned away, shoulders shaking. For a second, Daniel saw the woman he used to love more than oxygen. Then he saw the coffin, the dirt, Lucy's hands on wet black fabric, and his voice turned sharp again. "Start talking." Elena nodded, wiped her face, and forced herself to face him. "The warehouse fire wasn't an accident. I was working part-time in accounting for Cross Meridian." Daniel frowned. "Julian Cross?" "The developer on every billboard in this city. The one funding hospitals, shelters, train projects." "Yes," she swallowed. "I found payments hidden through shell companies. Bribes. Judges, cops, border officers. Girls moved through shipping manifests like cargo." Daniel stared at her. "I copied everything. I was going to take it to internal affairs through Caleb." That hit like a second blow. Elena's voice went thin.
I trusted him. He said he'd help me protect you and Lucy. But he was already on Cross's payroll. When he realized what I had, he told Cross I might talk.
Daniel's jaw flexed. So they killed you.
They tried. Caleb came to me the night before the fire and said there was one way to keep you alive. Stage my death. Make Cross believe the evidence died with me.
Daniel stepped closer, furious all over again. And you believed him?
I believed Lucy would die if I didn't.
Her answer came so fast, so raw, it cut through his anger for just a second.
He showed me photos of your route to work, Lucy's school, our house from across the street. He said Cross had already chosen which funeral songs he wanted played for both of you if I made the wrong choice.
Her voice broke.
I thought I had one night to save my family.
Daniel looked away. Because that, at least, sounded like Elena. Always the one who would walk barefoot through fire if it meant someone else got out first. So where were you? He asked.
Everywhere. Safe houses, motels, farmhouses, apartments with blacked-out windows. Every time I tried to send word, someone moved me. Then I realized Caleb never intended to let me come home. As long as I was dead to the world, he could keep taking money from Cross and pretending he was protecting everybody.
Daniel's breathing turned shallow. Daniel's voice came out rough. Why now?
Because Caleb slipped.
She looked toward the broken window, as if expecting headlights any second.
Cross is panicking. A federal audit reopened one of the old contracts. They need the original drive to destroy what I copied. Caleb never found it, but he knows I hid it before the fire. He thinks you know where.
I don't.
You do. You just don't know that you do.
Daniel shook his head. Stop talking in riddles. Elena took a breath.
Your watch.
He blinked.
The watch I gave you on our 10th anniversary. You stopped wearing it after me. I hid the microdrive under the back plate. Caleb searched the house, but he never checked anything that belonged to your grief.
Daniel's hand went unconsciously to his empty wrist. The watch was in his bedroom drawer. At home, where Caleb had just been. He turned for the door. Elena caught his arm.
Daniel.
He looked down at her hand on him. 5 years, and his body still recognized her before his mind could.
When we go back,
she said, voice trembling,
Lucy cannot see me like this. Not by accident. Not in fear.
He stared at her. You don't get to choose that, he said. And that one landed. She let go. The drive was gone. Daniel tore his bedroom apart. Drawer, closet, floorboards, old shoeboxes, the back of the dresser, while Elena stood in the doorway looking like she was being forced to watch her own funeral all over again. Then Daniel heard footsteps downstairs. Lucy. She entered the house with her headphones around her neck, still chewing gum, rolling her eyes before she even looked up.
Dad, Uncle Caleb said you were...
She saw Elena. The gum slipped from her mouth. For one impossible moment, nobody moved. Lucy's face went white.
Elena?
She breathed. Not Mom. Not yet. Because this was too cruel for that word. Elena's entire body folded in on itself.
Lucy.
The girl Daniel had raised through panic attacks and report cards and midnight fevers took one step back like she'd seen a ghost. Then another. Her voice came out cracked.
No. Baby, Elena whispered. Don't call me that! Lucy's scream shattered the room. Daniel moved toward her. Lucy, listen. No! No, no, no! You're dead! Tears burst down her face. I watched them bury you! Elena collapsed to her knees. I know. You let me think you were dead. I was trying to save you. From what? Lucy cried. From loving you?
Daniel had heard heartbreak before. Hospitals, cemeteries, emergency rooms at 3 in the morning. Nothing sounded like that. Lucy backed toward the wall, chest heaving. Do you know what people said about Dad after you died? Do you know what I heard at school? That maybe he snapped. That maybe you were trying to leave him. That maybe... She cut herself off, horrified by her own words. Daniel closed his eyes. Elena stared at him, stricken. They said that? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Lucy looked between them, seeing whole years she had never understood. Then her face changed. Fear hardened into anger. Where's Uncle Caleb? Daniel's eyes opened. Lucy, he said sharply, you do not call him. But she already had her phone out. Elena stood up too fast. No! Lucy recoiled from her again. He never lied to me. The silence after that was monstrous. Then from outside, a car horn. Once. Twice. Lucy ran to the window. It's him, she said, wiping her face. He's here. Daniel cursed and lunged for her phone, but too late. A text flashed on the screen from Caleb. Seen enough? Bring the drive to Grand Central Hall by 9. Come with Elena, or Lucy disappears for real this time. Daniel grabbed Lucy's shoulders. He's not here to help. She shook him off, wild-eyed. How am I supposed to believe either of you? Because that was the real wound, wasn't it? Not death, not lies. The destruction of trust. Elena stepped forward slowly, tears running freely now. You don't have to forgive me tonight. Maybe not this year. Maybe not ever. But please believe one thing. I never stopped being your mother. Not one day. Not one breath. Lucy looked at her with raw hatred and raw longing tangled together so tightly they were almost the same thing. Then she whispered, A mother comes back. Elena couldn't answer that. Because she was right. By 8:40, they were back at the station. Night had turned the glass roof into a black mirror. The big departure board clicked above the crowd. Commuters rushed past with coffee cups and suitcases, unaware that 3 lives were walking into a reckoning beneath fluorescent lights. Daniel had the watch in his pocket. He had found it where Caleb had tossed it, in the garage trash under paint cans, probably planning to retrieve it later without suspicion. The drive was still there, tiny, silent, heavy as a coffin. Lucy walked between them, arms folded tight across her chest. She had insisted on coming, insisted she was done being protected by people who lied for her own good. Daniel wanted to argue, but tonight had taught him exactly what protection without truth becomes. Elena kept glancing at Lucy, like a starving person staring at bread behind glass. At 8:57, Daniel's phone buzzed. Caleb. Food court mezzanine. No police. They went up. Caleb was standing near the railing in a navy coat, one hand in his pocket, the other resting casually on the shoulder of Julian Cross. Julian looked exactly like money looks when it learns to smile. Silver hair, perfect suit, kind grandfather eyes built in a laboratory to deceive entire cities. Lucy stiffened. Caleb smiled like this was a family dinner. There they are. Daniel kept his voice flat. Let her go. Caleb laughed softly. She's not tied up, Daniel. No, Lucy said, staring at him now like she'd never really seen him before. I just trusted you. Same thing. Something hard flickered in Caleb's face. Not guilt. Annoyance. Julian's gaze slid to Elena. You should have stayed dead. Elena stepped forward. And you should have run when you still had the chance. Julian smiled. From what? A woman with no name, no record, and a husband whose grief made him look unstable? Daniel felt Lucy turn toward him. Another hidden knife. Another old wound. Caleb sighed. Let's not drag this out. Hand over the drive and everyone walks away. You expect us to believe that? Daniel asked. I expect you to understand math, Caleb replied. You have no leverage. I have cops downstairs who answer to me, cameras I can edit, and a city that already buried Elena once. If she dies tonight, people will call it a tragic delusion from a broken woman. Elena's face went still. Daniel knew that look. It meant she was thinking past fear now. Into strategy. Into sacrifice. And he suddenly realized something awful. She had come here ready to die if that's what it took. He moved closer to her. Don't. She didn't look at him. Then don't let him win. Caleb held out his hand. The drive. Daniel pulled the watch from his pocket. Caleb's eyes sharpened. Julian actually smiled. That was when the station lights flickered. Once, twice, and every screen in Grand Central Hall went black. Caleb turned. So did Julian. Daniel didn't, because this part had been Elena's. While Lucy and Daniel argued in the car outside, Elena had vanished for 90 seconds and returned with nothing but a different expression. Daniel hadn't asked what she'd done. Now he knew. Every monitor in the station flashed alive. Instead of train times, there were spreadsheets, transfers, account numbers, shipping manifests, names, dates, girls listed as cargo. Then audio flooded the hall through the station speakers. Julian Cross's voice, clear as church bells. If Elena Mercer talks, kill the husband first, the daughter last. I want her to understand why. The entire station froze. People looked up. Phones came out. Passengers stopped mid-step. And then another voice. Caleb's. I staged the death. You keep paying. I keep the ghost buried. Julian lunged for Daniel. Caleb reached for his gun. Too slow. Lucy moved first. She grabbed a metal stanchion and slammed it into Caleb's arm with a scream that sounded like 5 years of funerals catching fire. The gun clattered across the tile. Daniel tackled Caleb. Julian shoved through the crowd toward the escalators, but half the station had phones in his face now, recording, shouting, pointing. Elena went after him. Mom! Lucy screamed before she could stop herself. That word stopped everyone who mattered. Elena turned for one fraction of a second, stunned, wrecked, alive. Then Julian pulled a knife from inside his coat and lunged. Daniel saw it too late. Elena stepped in front of Lucy on instinct older than reason. The blade drove into her side. Lucy's scream tore the station open. Daniel roared and hit Julian so hard, both men smashed into the railing. Security surged in. People scattered. Caleb, bloodied and desperate, tried to crawl for the fallen gun, but Lucy kicked it away and stood over him, shaking like a storm. "You came to my birthday every year," she said, sobbing. "You watched me cry for her." Caleb looked up at her, and for the first time his mask slipped. "I did what I had to do." "No," Daniel said, pinning him with all the rage of a man resurrected only to suffer again. "You did what paid you." Police from another district stormed the mezzanine then. Real ones, called by the flood of public footage Elena had triggered. Too many witnesses, too many screens, too many truths spilling at once to stuff back into the grave. Julian was dragged away, cursing. Caleb shouted Daniel's name like brotherhood still meant something. It didn't. Not anymore. Daniel dropped beside Elena. Blood soaked through her coat. His hands pressed against the wound, uselessly, desperately. "Hey," he said, voice falling apart. "Hey, stay with me." Elena looked at him with that same terrified tenderness from the station floor 5 years ago. "I'm sorry," she whispered again. "Stop saying that." Lucy collapsed beside them, gripping Elena's hand with both of hers, like if she held hard enough, the woman could not leave a second time. "You don't get to die now," Lucy choked out. "Do you hear me? You do not get to come back and then leave me again." Elena's face crumpled. "No," she whispered. "Never by choice." Those were the words Lucy had needed. Not explanations. Not perfect reasons. Choice. The thing grief had stolen from all of them. The ambulance doors closed. Daniel climbed in with Elena. Lucy climbed in too. Neither of them asked the other for permission. At the hospital, morning came slowly. Pale light, bitter coffee. Blood on Daniel's sleeve turning brown at the edges. Surgery took 4 hours. Lucy sat curled in a plastic chair, staring at nothing. At one point, Daniel draped his jacket around her shoulders. She didn't shrug it off. At another point, she asked, very quietly, "Did you know she was alive before today?" "No." She nodded once. A long time passed. Then, without looking at him, she said, "I used to be mad at you for surviving her." Daniel felt that all the way down to bone. "I know. I thought if you really loved her, you would have died too." He let out a slow breath. "Sometimes I wanted to." Now she looked at him. Teenage face. Child's pain still living underneath it. "Why didn't you?" Daniel looked through the waiting room glass, where dawn was finally breaking over the city Elena had nearly vanished inside. "Because you were still here." Lucy's mouth trembled. She leaned sideways, just slightly. Not a hug. Not yet. But enough for his shoulder to take her weight. For now, it was everything. When the surgeon came out, both of them stood so fast their chairs tipped backward. "She made it," the surgeon said. 3 words. And Daniel had to put a hand on the wall to stay upright. Weeks later, the city was still choking on the scandal. Julian Cross's empire collapsed under federal charges. Names rolled out of hidden files like bodies from a flood. Caleb took a plea deal too late to save himself and too early to save his soul. Every news channel wanted Elena. The dead wife who came back. The whistleblower. The ghost in the station. She said no to all of them. Healing took place in smaller rooms, quieter ones. A rented apartment 2 towns over. Bandages, nightmares, therapy appointments. Long silences that did not mean hatred, just exhaustion. Lucy didn't forgive her all at once. That would have been fake. Some days she sat by Elena's bed for hours and said nothing. Some days she slammed doors. Once she shouted, "You missed 5 years!" Elena, still weak, answered with tears in her eyes, "I know. I miss them too." And somehow that honesty worked better than any excuse. One rainy afternoon, Daniel came home with groceries and found them in the kitchen. Elena was teaching Lucy how to make the cinnamon tea she used to brew whenever storms rolled in. Lucy was pretending not to need instructions. The kettle whistled. Elena laughed softly, and Lucy, without thinking, laughed back. It was a tiny sound, easy to miss. But Daniel stood in the doorway and felt something in him that had been buried beside an empty coffin finally claw its way into the light. That night, after Lucy went upstairs, Elena found Daniel on the balcony. The city below was wet and gold and tired. She stood beside him, careful now, like love was something you approached slowly after it had once exploded in your hands. "I don't expect us to be what we were," she said. Daniel looked out at the street. "We can't be." "I know." He turned to her then. The woman he had mourned, the woman he had hated, the woman he had run toward even after death itself told him not to. "But maybe," he said, "we can be what survived." Elena cried at that. Not loudly, just enough for the truth to leave her body. She reached for his hand. This time, he let her take it. Below them, a train passed in the distance, carrying strangers home. And for the first time in 5 years, the sound no longer reminded Daniel of loss. It reminded him that sometimes the impossible doesn't come back to give you your old life. It comes back to ask whether you're brave enough to build a new one from the ruins. And some nights, if you're very quiet, you can hear love returning the same way it left, like a whisper in a crowded station, asking for one last chance to be believed.